Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom, sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And Breath of the Wild is a gigantic game in multiple facets. So, how big exactly is Tears of the Kingdom going to be? I feel this is a question that is very valid to ask when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom and how big the game could be. I mean, you would think off the bat, it's like, of course it's going to be huge. Of course it's going to be big. It's going to be the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's going to have the same Hyrule. It's going to have the sky and more than likely underground. So I mean, like, why are you even asking this question of like how big the game is going to be? Yes, I understand all that. And of course, we are going back to the same Hyrule, albeit with some very glaring changes thanks to the recent trailer. Hyrule Castle floating thanks to the power of Malice, Death Mountain pouring out Malice, and whatever happening over at Hebrew region or what have you. But we have to ask this question in terms of not only how big the map is going to be, but how large of an offering this game is going to have in terms of not only exploring this vast land of Hyrule, but in terms of story, in terms of dungeons, in terms of combat, content, all of that good jazz. Because I feel that more and more so in terms of game development when it comes to these big grander games that tend to follow a certain formula and a certain format in terms of an overworld or whatnot. Some of the time, not all the time, but some of the time they play it with safe sequels, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you want more of the same, just more, I mean, that's good, right? But then that gives the whole argument. I'm like, oh, this could have been DLC, oh, this could have been that, or whatnot. And for Tears of the Kingdom to be like a full fleshed out sequel, I feel this game has to, offer a lot in terms of content, not just how big the overworld is. And the world is going to be gigantic. Breath of the Wild already dealt with massive verticality in terms of an open world game, but don't call it an open world game, it's an open air game, which makes a ton of sense when it comes to, going to a high peak and then, gliding down in such a fast motion to like try to get from one point or the other and basically being able to climb almost everything, right? But now Tears of the Kingdom takes it up a notch, in which we have visible islands thanks to the latest trailer that is within the scope of our eyesight and within the scope of everything rendering in terms of like what is above Hyrule but is below the clouds. And then we have everything that's above the clouds. So there's like tiers to this massive new verticality in terms of the open air space of where we can get to. And I really want to understand how we're going to be able to get from point A to point B in massive ways. I mean, we already got a hint of that in the latest trailer when it comes to the reverse stasis of a block returning to the sky. But I feel that there's going to be more avenues to explore when it comes to going back up into the air. And then of course from the first trailer, the second trailer, and even the third trailer, when you see like little hints here and there, it's heavily insinuated that also the underground is going to be explorable. Eiji Aonuma said it himself that like, beyond that of the familiar land of Hyrule, the overworld and the sky itself, we're going to be exploring new areas, that the world of Tears of the Kingdom goes beyond that of the land and sky. And people are like, hey, it'll be cool to go underwater, and I'm like, that would be a huge surprise if Nintendo was sitting on something like that. And it's really up their alley when it comes to the Nintendo Switch days. They'd be sitting on like wild stuff only to like show it off like really soon to release, or just sitting on a game inherently, and it's like, hey, the game comes out in 2 months, hey, the game comes out in 3 months. So I mean, if they're sitting on the whole concept of going underwater and even underground to add on to the overworld and the sky, Tears of the Kingdom is going to be a ride. And the reason I'm bringing up such concepts like that is because that would help expand what Link is able to do in or for exploration and for side quests and main quests, because a lot of people really want traditional dungeons to come back in Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm one of them. Listen, I love the Divine Beast from Breath of the Wild. I felt like it was a breath of fresh air, but then something had me yearning from like, damn, imagine a game like Breath of the Wild but with dungeons like from Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, all that good jazz, Skyward Sword. It would really be an interesting way on how Link's repertoire of abilities and how he functions in the world of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild, and apply that to how dungeons are traditionally put together for the most part when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild or whatever. And I guess the closest we ever got to that in the original Breath of the Wild was Hyrule Castle. And if you want to count it, the final dungeon in the Breath of the Wild DLC of Champions Ballad, right? But with all of that being said, there's also a big glaring point on how big this game could be in terms of what it offers, and that is Sheikah shrines. Like it's weird that I see a lot of people very combative and debating of either liking or disliking Sheikah shrines, where I thought that it was a really cool offering. There was 120 of them. A lot of them acted like mini dungeons, and you're always constantly exploring, across the bend, within the water, underneath ground, up in the air, the tallest mountains for these shrines in order to, increase your health and your stamina. But I feel like the stamina and health thing, and of course getting the Tunic of the Wild at the very end of the game, or at the very end of the shrines, was all just I would say after the fact prizes and resolutions. For me, like the feeling of finding these shrines and completing these shrines, that was reward enough for me. And I wouldn't want to see a concept like that taken away in Tears of the Kingdom, because shrines and Sheikah technology, like Sheikah towers and all that good jazz, they're nowhere to be seen in this game 3 trailers in, and I feel like we're kind of looking at a almost complete state of the game. So in that sense, I would really like something to replace the whole concept of Sheikah shrines within Tears of the Kingdom. I've already played around the idea of like Zonai altars or Zonai equivalent of the Sheikah shrines and whatnot. And now that, it's basically out of the bag that Tears of the Kingdom is probably going to be dealing a lot with Zonai stuff and whatnot. And then in the last trailer, something all the way at the bottom of the trailer itself at the end, you kind of see what could be insinuated to be like there's a Zonai version of a Sheikah shrine or whatnot, and there's plenty of theories, and I've got some coming out of how Sheikah and Zonai technology is like one is a predecessor or a precursor to the other, and then there might be some hanky-panky going on, but that is besides the point in terms of how big this game could be in terms of what it can offer. And then also we have to think about the idea that this game is being built from the ground up for Nintendo Switch, because a lot of people keep forgetting that Breath of the Wild was originally a Wii U game, and it's always funny to think about it. It's like, dang, a Wii U game winning all these Game of the Year awards, that's wild. Breath of the Wild. That game was already huge, and I feel like, it was pushing the Wii U to its limits, and then Nintendo Switch, I felt that the Nintendo Switch version was still chugging every now and again, but I felt the developers didn't really tap into the full power or the full potential of this console when they were doing that, because of course they were making it as the Wii U version, and they're like, okay, we gotta put it on the Switch as well. So building this game from the ground up, literally, Tears of the Kingdom, for the Nintendo Switch, I feel they can finally master what the Switch is capable of in terms of what Zelda can offer with this massive world. Because I see a lot of people just like, oh man, how are they going to do all that? The Switch is going to blow up in terms of like having this big world, this big explorable world. I'm like, Breath of the Wild was originally a Wii U game. So I mean, like, untapped potential that is finally going to be tapped within Tears of the Kingdom. And of course, Monolith Soft is happening, and they do wondrous work when it comes to open world games on the Nintendo Switch. So I am very confident that this game is going to be massive in terms of exploration. But one of the biggest things that a lot of people complain about from Breath of the Wild, and rightfully so, is that at some points the overall does feel a bit, I don't want to say bland, dry, or empty, because if you want empty, go play Twilight Princess, right? In terms of the overworld, I just feel that this game has so much potential of being a living, breathing world, and filling it up with things to do, side quests. You can go and liberate cities and whatnot from Ganondorf's rule, because I mean Ganondorf is back. You can go and try to bring parts of the earth back down to Hyrule itself in order to build up secrets or find treasures that you can only do so by reversing time and bringing things down or putting things up or whatnot. And exploring that sense of wonder all over again in Tears of the Kingdom in new ways is very, very, very important to me in terms of how big this game could be. Because it's weird that Aonuma keeps on saying, it's like, oh, we're tackling the familiar world of Breath of the Wild along with the skies and beyond that, yada yada yada, with new gameplay elements. I'm like, okay, that's cool, new gameplay. That's something that I would like to, you know, assume that is standard in terms of a sequel. But I mean, like, I would like a lot more stuff in it. Give us things like mission boards, synthesis, quests that can only give us a certain type of item and we can only get the item from that quest. And give us Adventure Guild adventure quests and let us go into caves and, you know, knock out all of the moblins and, you know, bokoblins are infesting a cave, and so settlers can go in and then like set up shop or something like that, and then unlock more avenues for side quests to build up a town. Like, take everything we done for Terrytown, but apply that like everywhere in Tears of the Kingdom, because I mean, Hyrule's gonna need it after seeing the trailers. You know, at the end of the day, this all goes without saying that my confidence in Nintendo in terms of putting out a really good sequel for Tears of the Kingdom, you know, following up Breath of the Wild, my confidence is really, really high. But then, you know, sometimes that confidence gets shaken when we don't see anything, right? And I like to see more stuff of what Tears of the Kingdom can offer in terms of being a sequel to what is, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, depending on my mood, Zelda games of all time. All in all, I feel that there should be a lot to do within Tears of the Kingdom. There's always the idea and the question that constantly ponders within people's minds of like, it would be a real shame if there wasn't as much to do in the sequel than there was to do in the original game. And I am pretty confident. I am like 100% confident that's not going to happen in terms of, you know, Nintendo and the Zelda team developing this title. But I feel like a little transparency would go a long way in terms of the direction that Tears of the Kingdom is going to take, that's going to set it aside or apart from the original Breath of the Wild. Because, you know, all things considered, when you're looking at Breath of the Wild, a lot of it was experimentation, right? And I feel that big experimentation is going to pay off beautifully in Tears of the Kingdom. And then one big thing that can easily expand how much we can do into the game itself is the experimentation with the engine. Because people are still doing wild stuff in Breath of the Wild. So I want to see things in Tears of the Kingdom that's going to really bring me to tears. Laughter, sadness, all that good jazz when it comes to people tackling this game and breaking it apart in the most beautiful way. I'm sure this game is going to be massive, but I want it to be massive in more ways than one. But let me know what you think on how big possibly Tears of the Kingdom can be in terms of exploration and what the game can offer us. Leave your comments in the comment section below and be sure to like, share, and most importantly subscribe to HMK for more Zelda and Tears of the Kingdom content every week. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters for helping making this video happen and supporting the channel. If you want to find out how you can support HMK for just $1 a month, check it out in the description box below and pick up some merch at my shop at Fourth Wall. Alright guys, until the next video, this has been HMK, and I will check you guys later.